The Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, is conducting a comprehensive review and investigation into foreign exchange utilization in the last 10 years, which involves scores of leading companies in the country that may have benefited from FX allocation from the Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN. The target companies include Dangote Group, TGI, and Flour Mills, among several others. The development might not be unconnected with the investigation over arbitrary FX allocations. Clearly, none of the companies was said to have committed any infractions, as there were yet to be proof of their involvement in criminal activities. Equally, yesterday, former Minister of Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management and Social Development, Sadiya Umar Farouk, wrote to the anti-graft agency to tender her apology for failing to appear before the commission to answer questions on alleged laundering of 37.1 billion naira during her tenure. But suspended National Coordinator of the National Social Investment Program Agency, NSIPA, Halima Shehu, reported to the agency after she was released Tuesday night. The EFCC is working.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot going on. And in principle, this is nice because we need to be able to investigate the past administration because a lot happened and there are questions that need to be asked. I think I will all remember boldly when we saw the then humanitarian minister then sharing money for people in the hands during COVID-19. And we're asking, where is the accountability for all of this? How this money is being shared? The social investment program, a lot of the things they did then looked very nebulous to us. So if EFCC is asking questions, they have rights to ask. But they should also respect the rights and the constitutionally laid down rights of the individuals involved. If you're doing your investigation, respect the rights of the citizen, because despite whatever allegations you have against her, it is just an allegation now. Nothing has been substantiated except it goes through a court process. So I call that respect. But the question I would like to ask is, all of a sudden, I'm not denigrating people for their health. But why is it that when there's corruption allegation, all of a sudden, people that once served in government, they become sick? We even remember a former minister that even went to forge medical papers just to be able to prove that he was sick. That one became another case because there are allegations that he forged the medical papers, so allegations anyway. So all of a sudden they become sick. We remember the case of people that were in severe pain. Anyway, that was not a corruption allegation or anything. Remember some senators that fainted and all sorts of things with health. Because when this same person responded to those allegations at first, I mean, she didn't talk about any, but we cannot say about her health. That's just a side comments, that's a side commentary.
Fair enough.
But it's just very curious to understand why is that all of a sudden when there's an allegation, you have to come and face the authorities, you fall ill. Maybe it's the jitters, I don't know. But it's well within their rights to be able to investigate because a lot of things need to be done as regards the humanitarian ministry. And also, an eye must be put on the humanitarian ministry. Because we have started hearing all sorts of things, people arrested, anyway, people have been changed from their positions. We need to put an eye because that ministry gets a lot of funding, but we don't see the impact of the funding. I still challenge, apart from people that you put up on camera to be able to show that we gave monies, what is the impact as regards poverty of all the billions and the millions spent? The loan that we took recently to be able to give people in conditional cash transfer, where are the people that money was given to? How has it affected them? How has it changed their lives and prospects? There are many questions we need to ask. And as with other schemes, remember where I would say trader money was vote buying, obviously, and how they led the charge of that. Till today, we've not seen the impact on the market. Because you see, conditional cash transfer, when you look at the Brazilian model, Bolsa Familia, is tied to a goal, and that goal lifts people out of poverty. I keep saying the story of Lula, Inácio Lula da Silva, the current president of Brazil. After he left power many years ago, when he came back for re-election, guess the bulk of the young people that voted for him were the people that benefited from conditional cash transfer over 10 years ago. And a lot of them kept on saying, you know what, I'm a doctor today because of the money Lula was given that time to help my parents to see me through school. And those were the bulk of the young people that voted for him. So you can see the effect of that conditional cash transfer. And when it mattered the most, they paid Lula back in votes. When are we going to see that effect in Nigeria? So that's why we need to look at the scheme. Concerning the EFCC also going, I would also put a caveat out there. It must be in respect of the rights of those people and those companies. There's been a lot of talk about, this Forex situation and all of that. What happened in the last administration? Our allocation was given, to groups like Dangote, TGI, and other companies like that. In fact, the Dangote group said they had first submitted the information, so they don't know why the EFCC is going to witch hunt them. In fact, there was another story about the fact that it's another rival business group. But apart from that, the EFCC should be able to do its investigation thoroughly. It's not a case where you harass companies, make them look bad, do media by trial.
Yeah.
And I would like the EFCC to stop media by trial. This is from it. Because it is this same EFCC that makes a hula baloo of everything. But when they go to court, there's no substantial evidence. And they lose the case in court. So please, they should do their work diligently to be able to get to the truth of all of these matters. Because we need to be able to get to the truth of all of these matters. How these monies were spent, how these monies were appropriated, what really happened, who got what, when, and how. That's it. But most importantly, if this government is serious about fighting corruption, like it has shown some signs, and I will give kudos to them, the government needs to audit the NNPC. We believe there's a whole lot more than the NNPC that has not come out. Also, this government needs to audit the NDDC. There was a white paper released, and I challenge this government to release it. There was a white paper released, written, as regards the audit of the NDDC. That white paper had been sitting for a year. If this government is ready to fight corruption, they should release the white paper on the NDDC. We challenge them. Let's even know how much, what goes on, what corruption goes on in the NDDC. How much is being spent? Because the government cannot just get a white paper ready as regards recommendations that need to be made, and we are not seeing it in the public. So we even know what happened. How many accounts were in the NDDC? How many accounts did they put around? What was going on in the NDDC all these years? What was the report of the forensic audit? I know it's been written into a white paper. We need to be able to see the end of all of that. Also, we need a proper forensic audit in the NNPC. Let's see what goes on there. What happened in the subsidy, regime? How did NNPC run the subsidy regime? Are they still paying subsidy as we speak today? What's the transparency level in the NNPC? A proper forensic audit is needed. On the money spent hitherto on the refinery till date, a proper forensic audit. If the government does not be mishandled on the NDDC, the NNPC, and some other bodies and all of that, all they are doing will be a charade and a walk in the park. I will not believe that we have an anti-corruption fight. Because like we were saying yesterday, it is only 2024 this government have to work. Ayo, at the end of 2024, early 2025, it's going to be officially 2 years to the election. Politicking will have started. When politicking starts, distraction starts. At the beginning of 2026, politicking is going to be in full gear. Early 2027, a new leadership comes in place by February. So it's only this year and probably some parts of 2025 that you really have to do the work. So it's time for this government to get up to this work. Look at the NNPC. The reports of NDDC, the report that was finally written out after the white paper, two should be released, because we can't just say people come faint on TV and we just go like that and they say off your mind. No, that must not be the end of the NDDC matter.
That's right. Well, I'm tempted to sing the famous song of a particular gentleman, turn by turn. Oh. So perhaps, the EFCC have centered on the, following the investigative reports by the special investigator recruited by the federal government, Jim Obaze. Of course, we had mentioned that it was he had just done the report and they had to go through process before a conclusion was made. So I think it's important to put a caveat there. But in saying that the federal government, the EFCC, must investigate the activities of the NNPC and the NDDC, totally agree with you. But I want to invest a bit of confidence in them, that since they've started on a very great note, especially under the new chair, relatively new, Mr. Olulukayode, who seems to be wanting to put his stamp on his fight against corruption. I think this is a welcome development. In terms of how events unfolded yesterday, the EFCC had stormed the Dangote group, and like you rightly mentioned, a spokesperson had said that they'd submitted all the documents they'd asked for, so they felt like it was almost an attempt to embarrass the organization. And so this again goes to that conversation around headlines or audio headlines without thorough investigation. Maybe what a suggestion or perhaps a recommendation to the new leadership of the EFCC is less headlines, more convictions. Because it's easy. I mean, we remember the Ikoyi billions. We remember a number of cases, high-profile cases, where there would be a lot of noise and media trial. By the end of the day, it ends up being nothing, or, there's no conviction because, like you said, lack of evidence. Anyways, they went to the Dangote office, and according to Dangote's an official source, they said that they gave them everything they needed. They were able to look into their books for a few hours, and the idea was that there were allegations of round tripping and use or abuse of the use of Forex allocated to them as an organization, especially in the purchase of raw materials, so that they got Forex from the CBN without approval. I think another thing I must mention in this particular report is that it was said that the CBN governor, the previous CBN governor, had allocated Forex without the board of directors approval and also without the investment committee approval. If that is the case, because remember all this is still under investigation, if that is the case, then it would go back again to what we've always spoken about in terms of strengthening institutions. How was the CBN governor able to make certain decisions, including investing or putting Forex in different accounts, in overseas accounts, without proper process, due process done? So we need to investigate that a bit further. There's so much I believe this investigation will unravel. The thing is just that as it breaks, as the news break, we talk about the stories each day, but we need a holistic and complete, and we need to see this to the complete end so that we begin to see the cracks that exist in some of our key institutions in the country. I think it's really important. I am glad that the groups, it's not just Dangote Group, I think we just mentioned that because they had, that's the one that they went to yesterday. I know that the Boa Group as well, as we talked about yesterday, the TGI, and I don't want anyone to say this is a witch hunt, because every time an investigation starts on an individual or an organization, the first thing they cry is, oh, it's a witch hunt, it's a witch hunt. If hands are clean, then present all the documents. Let there be a detailed look into what has transpired. If indeed the monies allocated for purchase of raw materials or to transact business has been used for what it was, Forex was used for what was allocated, and no round tripping, because they said that it's part of what's contributed to the economic woes of the nation. And so if some organizations are profiting illegally from, or perhaps in a illegal way, let me put it that way, then we must arrest that so that we can stop that, because the economy has been hurt. It has affected the economy immensely in the last few years. And again, heads must rule. Any guilty party, whether previous or current, must face the full consequence. Now, talking about consequences, let me come to the National Social Investment Program Agency, the NSIPA, which was under the purview of at that time, the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs and Social Development, that was headed by Sadia Umar Farouk, who now said that she didn't appear before the EFCC yesterday because she apparently was ill. I pray that she gets full recovery, but when she recovers, she has questions to answer. She must face the EFCC and also Nigerians, because she's accountable, because like you mentioned, it is sad that an agency that was set up, because this was the first time that the ministry was established to address the needs of Nigerians living in poverty and to develop lives, human lives and human capacity. It would be such a shame, because according to the EFCC report, out of 44 billion naira that was said to have been transferred to accounts, different accounts which seem to have been fronted by certain individuals and organizations, they'd been able to recover trace 30 billion naira of that, and they're looking to ask questions to recover the money. I hope, as we have said, that they will get to the bottom of this. I know the coordinator has been apprehended. The director of finance, who retired in December last year, has been brought in for questioning. There are questions to be answered, and every single penny must be accounted for. Rufa, if you recall, when Dr. Betta Edu was here, especially when she came into the role newly, we had asked her if she was going to probe and look into the books of the previous administration.
Yeah.
And I remember Shetech was looking forward. I'm glad that the EFCC is taking this this forward. And beyond that, the reason why we must have people accountable is that it must serve as a deterrent. If this government is serious about fighting corruption, we don't want the initial, what Nigerians will call gra-gra, and a lot of headlines here and there without any solid or any tangible convictions from this process. We're not saying anyone is guilty because, of course, according to the law, you are innocent until proven guilty. However, if there are questions to be answered, I'd rather the EFCC did a thorough job of investigation before naming and shaming on headlines, because at the end of the day, it also causes reputational damage, whether to the individuals or to the organization, if they're not found guilty at the end of the investigation. Do your investigation thorough, bring people on board, and where they're found guilty, I hope the full weight of the law will be applied in everything, in all the circumstances that we've seen.
I think you should get to the stage where people should start suing the EFCC for the reputational damage done by not properly investigating. Maybe that's when they will learn. Maybe if they have a couple of cases when people sue them heavily for the reputational damage by not doing their work properly.
There's some, the former Minister of Petroleum, Diezani Alice Madueke, sued the EFCC at some point. So there are some people who take them up. But again, just the judicial process, the slow processes of the courts. But like you mentioned, absolutely correct, because at the end of the day, what you see online is, Dangote is in trouble. I know in Nigeria, a lot of people just read headlines. They don't see the details of the headlines. Or Bua is in trouble, or the humanitarian minister was complicit and all that. We need to emphasize the fact that this is just an investigation. However, it raises a lot of questions, especially following this investigation, and we must see this to the end. Move on to our next story this morning. In an apparent bid to consolidate himself in power, Governor of Rivers State, Siminalayi Fubara, has begun to reach out to politicians within and outside the state, aligning and realigning forces, whose association he thinks can help him navigate the maze of political crisis produced by the recent face-off with his political godfather, Nyesom Wike. Fubara yesterday visited his nearest neighbor, Bayelsa State Governor Senator Duye Dere and Senator Azuta Mbata from Rivers State, to seek further unity between the two states. During the visit to Dere, Fubara said he was willing to work with him to achieve a peaceful settlement of issues concerning property jointly owned by both states that were pending in courts. Towards the end of his tenure as Rivers State Governor, the current Minister of the Federal Capital Territory, FCT, Wike, and Dere had fielded the jointly owned property. Amid the dispute, Wike had ordered the demolition of a Bayelsa-owned property in Port Harcourt and claimed it was unkempt. However, Fubara expressed his strong desire for mutual cooperation when he paid a New Year's visit to Dere at his country home in Sampu in Opokuma local government area of Bayelsa State. All right. Is this a consolidation of allies or just wanting to do the right thing? I remember very clearly that demolition. We talked about it.
We talked about, we interviewed people already. Yeah, so a little historical context. So there was the old River State. The old River State also had parts of what is called Bayelsa today. So hence them owning things jointly. And we remember that demolition, a lot of people said was because of Governor Wike's alleged fight, with those in the helms of affairs and the other PDP governors when he was mad at them about his own ambition. That was Governor Duye Dere. That was just close to him in Bayelsa State. That's why he went ahead. And it was not only Bayelsa State property. There were many properties Governor Wike damaged. It was very, very larger-than-life personality while he was there. And he did a lot of things, and he got away with it. And him getting away with a lot of things, indeed, is reflective of Nigeria itself. That people can muscle their way and get away with a lot. But that should not be the order of the day of Nigeria. But as regards this consolidation, Governor Fubara will have to let a lot of political watchers know what is up his sleeves. Because at first, he has not said anything. Even the so-called big players he's reaching out to, some of the big players said he had not reached out to them prior to this time. Because those that will stand for him in the River State are the same PDP people that Wike pushed him away for because Wike was building his own empire. So, when he's saying he's reaching out to people like Governor Duye Dere, if things hit the fan in Rivers, is it Duye Dere that will come from Bayelsa to come and fight for you? There are people like Senator Leone about there. There are people like the Sekibos of this world there, and other top politicians. But you've been too distant from them. And the question is, You are the one that are going forward and going to the back. At first, they had a rally in your honor. A strongman rally. Thousands of people were there. We couldn't ascertain the number of people that were there. Where they sang the Day Your Day song. Yeah. The next minute, you said, oh, things were bad. You had to just sign for peace, in the interest of peace. People that were in the meeting said, oh, you were handheld to sign. And the next minute, you started making moves. People like Edison here that stood with you, all of a sudden, we've seen him, he's been sacked. He's had to leave. His own case, his suit against the 27 lawmakers, has been taken out of court. Then now you are making every attempt at peace. So he needs to know. But we are saying that you are visiting governor. I just think it's a peace visit. I don't think it's a consolidation visit. I think to a large extent, like I said the other day, when President Tinubu was praising Governor Fubara and said he's a good man, and I reminded him that there's a Yoruba saying that said when they say the boy is good, the boy is good, you know the meaning. So probably he just wants to align with his political godfather. Let's see. Let us see if Fubara is going to reverse and resign into law the budget he has already signed into law after it was passed by the National Assembly. I mean by the State House of Assembly. Let us see. Some of these moves are part of the implementation. Let's see whether that 27 will be reinstated. But it will be political suicide for Governor Fubara to reinstate. Other people too have told me that, hey, Fubara has something of his sleeves. Probably he knows the game he's playing. But I'm sure if he finally comes out on top of this game, I will give it to Governor Fubara as the biggest poker player in the world. Yep. Because the way he's keeping a straight face, only God knows. He tilts here, he tilts there tomorrow. Nobody even knows what is up his sleeve. So nobody knows his alignment. But I just want to think, like in the game of cards, he has a joker up his sleeves. That's what I want to think. So when they say he's meeting Governor Doyediri and everything, maybe to probably align with the, the PDP fraternity. But I don't think it's to be able to consolidate in Rivers State because he has not shown anything to consolidate in Rivers State. What has happened that his political godfather, although in a way that we do not support, has browbeaten him so much that the elders in the state had to sue the Attorney General, the President, to court over this matter. And the government to court over this matter, saying they don't like the way that he was made to sign this peace deal. So only time will tell. But I know there's still a lot. Maybe this is just, like in a season, when you're having a season film, there's an end of the series. Maybe that's end of series coming soon. So maybe this is season break. Maybe we're just taking a season break. Maybe another installment will start soon. But I should think he has something else to say. Probably. My mind tells me he's waiting to get his Supreme Court victory first. All right, okay. That's what my mind tells me. I
totally agree. In this drama that's been unfolding in River State, obviously, the season finale we haven't seen the season finale yet.
The finale is not
and yet. As like you, Rufai, I think a number of observers are waiting to see Governor Fubara's next move. I do think that perhaps you're instituting in him more confidence, and a lot of people are feeling that he has something up his sleeves or he must have a plan, because it's almost like there'll be a wait with bated breath and then nothing happens. Don't go and suffocate in your waiting, in terms of for his next move. In trying to examine this move, he went to Bayelsa State and said that he went to, first of all, thank the governor, Doyediri, who is also in his party, PDP, even though now we're asking questions as to where the PDP stands in all of this, because we haven't seen a significant show of support or perhaps stance from the PDP. In fact, it seems like the governor has leaned more towards the president and, by inference, the APC during this crisis. But apparently, he said that Governor Doyediri supported him during the political crisis in the state. And also in attendance was the former governor of Bayelsa State, Governor Dixon, Seriake Dixon. And part of what they discussed beyond the political crisis in Rivers State was also the property or the lands that are jointly owned by both states, and the matters in the court as to who owns what, where where one ends and with the other begins. And so, very good. I think this further demonstrates. So I believe this further demonstrates what Governor Fubara has tried to put out in terms of his image, a peace-loving man, unlike his predecessor, who went the demolition way when it had to do with issues concerning Bayelsa. And this caused, of course, tensions between the two states. It appears as if Governor Fubara in line with his consistency in saying that he's a man of peace and was willing to pay any sacrifice for the good of the people of Rivers State, this is another move in that direction. In terms of, I'd rather settle things amicably. And this must be praised because whether we like it or not, everything in governance, politics, there must be some form of diplomacy. It doesn't always have to be force and, demolitions and just, attacks here and there. There can be civil ways of resolving conflicts. And I think in that regard, the governor has made a good move in terms of, let me mend fences with my neighbors because of things that, the tensions that have occurred, especially with the past administration. Now, to what extent would a peaceful move benefit the governor in this instance? Some people have said that perhaps he was too docile in his response to former Governor Wike and that he capitulated when he ought to have stood his ground and established himself as the Chief Executive Officer of Rivers State. That is still yet to fully unfold, as we've mentioned. And so what people are hoping is that because he has the support of the people, the elders in Rivers State, a majority of the people in Rivers State, they hope that he would stand against any kind of oppression or intimidation whether from former governor, whether from political actors, or even at the federal level. That it was important that he put the people first, as he seems to have his body language is. Again, is this a reaching out to allies or perhaps just a branch of peace, an olive branch extended to their neighboring states, whom we call the sister states, where they've had issues around land matters, encroachment and the likes? We will wait to see that. But Governor Fubara hasn't played the move enough for us to determine where he stands or what he's doing. But like you mentioned, Rufai, I totally agree. It would be the political move of perhaps the year or decade of a political actor if we see him come up with a joker card and I think that's what a lot of people are waiting. What does this man have up his sleeves, especially as it regards politics in Rivers State? Or would he just, as with his manner, just promote peace until the end of this first tenure, which I think after this he would probably really not be coming back if he continues on to toe this line. Move on to our final story this morning. Sierra Leone has reportedly rejected a request from the Economic Community of West African States to allow the temporary relocation of former President Ernest Bai Koroma to Nigeria as earlier planned yesterday. The regional bloc had asked Sierra Leone to drop charges against Koroma and allow him to retain his full entitlement as a former president and relocate him to Nigeria. Former President Koroma was expected in Nigeria to begin a political asylum signed off by the host country and brokered by ECOWAS. The decision is sequel to an intervention by ECOWAS, which sent a high-powered delegation to Freetown on December 23rd, according to a statement signed by ECOWAS President Omar Alieu Toure. Koroma is charged with 4 offenses, including treason, for his alleged role in a failed coup attempt to topple the government of Julius Maada Bio on November 26 last year. We had an extensive conversation about this yesterday, and we're going to be talking to one of our guests later on today about this. But your take on this very quickly.
So Sierra Leone has been very topsy-turvy as regards the political terrain. We all remember the late 90s. Sierra Leone was a big fighting zone, and the emergence of Tijan Kaba, then Ernest Bai Koroma, that pretty much stabilized things, and the reemergence of former military chief Julius Maada Bio, which in the last elections, there were a lot of controversies around that election. So he was so quick to call that his party had won. And we all know that Ernest Bai Koroma had been a top man in opposition all this while. And pretty much, it's been a real struggle in the country between those two figures. Ernest Bai Koroma on one part, which the opposition did say they won the last election, and Maada Bio on the other part. And like I stated yesterday, when you have a political impasse like this, people normally use all sorts of methods and strategies. One that comes to my mind is Recep Tayyip Erdogan and Turkey. And these are my views, where Fethullah Gulen had reigned supreme in Turkey for a very long while. He had a lot of adherents with his own group. And there was a coup in Turkey, which a lot of people felt was Recep Tayyip Erdogan's consolidation coup. Because since that coup, Erdogan had consolidated and cracked down on his opponents. And he used that coup as a way to say, Fethullah Gulen cannot come close, which a lot of people felt he was using to consolidate himself. And we've seen it happen across. So when this coup happened and it was pinned on Ernest Bai Koroma, a lot of people started to wonder, well, what was going on here? Even when you track back historically across African countries, you would see that, yes, some of the coups are in fact phantom coups. And we've had our own fair share of those phantom coups. That's sort of like consolidation coups where the leader in charge says, oh, there was a coup plotted against me and all of that. But there are some that are real cool, like the one that happened in Nigeria. And we totally abhor coups. We don't want them. Like I was using the word abba yesterday by Thomas Isidore Noel Shankara. But ECOWAS is trying to intervene because they see more a political streak to all of this matter. And the intervention was a deal that Ernest Bai Koroma was supposed to come to Nigeria and be, the guest of the Nigerian state. But that is not happening again. So what I see is that the authorities in Sierra Leone, as led by Madabio, want to go ahead and make him face those charges and meet a very high punishment on him that will probably put him out of circulation. The question is, what will be the reaction by the opposition party as regards all of this? Will that be in the interest of lasting peace and stability in Sierra Leone, owing to the hitherto past of Sierra Leone we know, and the volatility of Sierra Leone? Sierra Leone has been so volatile to the extent that at a point the army took over and a 25-year-old Srasa became the leader, the head of state, at the age of 25 in Sierra Leone. That's the volatility Sierra Leone has always had over the years. Is this the best decision, or could Madabio reach out, have an olive branch towards Ernest Bai Koroma, and they form a stronger alliance of some sort? It happened. Formerly, Odinga was sworn enemies with the former president of Kenya, Uhuru Kenyatta. But after they went on for a long time with their fight, they had a peace meeting that I think was called their National Prayer Breakfast. And in fact, formerly sworn enemies became allies. That, Raila Odinga was being supported by Uhuru Kenyatta, even in the last election, against his own deputy that finally emerged. So the question we should ask is this the best part that Madabio should do to run Ernest Bai Koroma out, or look for ways to consolidate the peace? Because if you take out Ernest Bai Koroma from the circulation and say, okay, face the full wrath of the law, then what happens to the continued peace in Sierra Leone, and what happens to the developmental prospects Sierra Leone needs to have? I mean, that's the big question. But the ECOWAS group will still be talking, and let's see how all of this pans out.
All right, so yesterday when when we discussed this news story, I had talked about the fact and praised the role of the ECOWAS in terms of brokering peace whilst investigations were ongoing, and the agreement by President Bola Tinubu on behalf of Nigeria to host the former president of Sierra Leone. We had said and emphasized the fact that it was still subject to Sierra Leone accepting the offer by ECOWAS to provide political asylum to former President Koroma in Nigeria. It seemed as if the Sierra Leonean government, especially the president, was quiet. We didn't get a solid stance in terms of whether they had agreed to this deal through a letter by the ECOWAS signed by its president, Ali Toure, on the 2nd of January. Now, after the whole news, conversations around the fact that we're looking to host or provide political asylum to former President Koroma, it then emerged that the president, through his Minister of Foreign Affairs, Timothy Kamba, had said that they were rejecting the deal, that in their opinion, from their perspective, the letter was not a reflection of the agreement made by ECOWAS and the Sierra Leonean government when they paid a visit on the 23rd of December. And I think that this is quite instructive, because it's almost like throwing egg on the faces of ECOWAS, because at the end of the day, this then reverses my earlier praise of ECOWAS being, positioning itself as a power and a broker in matters along the West African side of the African continent. So they've said there that they want, like you mentioned, they would rather have him remain under house arrest, face this, that's President Koroma's lawyers, former President Koroma's lawyers has described as trumped up charges, meaning that it was just there were charges that were invented by the government who is in opposition just to hold him, to hold and that he might not be able to get free, fair trial. So these are the conversations. And yesterday I talked about the fact that it was important that as part of ECOWAS's highlights for this year or conversations or front burner topic is how to strengthen democracies on the West African bloc. We experienced coups, a spate of coups in the last few years. Last year alone, I believe we had about 2 or 3 coups with one attempt and whispers about coups in other parts. And we talked about the fact that until we had conversations around the type of democracy that is practiced on this continent, we will continue to see agitations from the people. So on the table of ECOWAS, we have sit-tight leaders. We have leaders who got power by undemocratic means. And yet they are the same people who want to go into nations to broker peace because things are not quite. So it seems like there's the strength and the power of that bloc is not as effective as they would like it to be. Sierra Leone president was said to have been in Algeria for a meeting, and he didn't deem it important to respond, despite the fact that the letter was on the 2nd of January. There was news around the fact that former President Nkrumah was coming to Nigeria yesterday, and only yesterday even they said they were not playing because they didn't quite agree with the terms of the letter. So again, it would wait to see what ECOWAS would do. Would they send another delegation? Remember, it was a high-powered delegation led by presidents of Senegal, Ali Touré, who is the president of ECOWAS, and so to imagine that they would rebuff and renege on their agreement to allow President Nkrumah come to Nigeria on political asylum is signals. There's a big signal around that. Remember as well, was it in Benin Republic whereby they refused to see ECOWAS representatives when the coup happened. So these are conversations around how do we strengthen this institution and strengthen. I mean, that's what I've been talking about this morning, but it's really important. And we see that as a big challenge on the African continent and why democracies do not thrive. Institutions are weak. Every man is a law unto himself, and it depends on who is in leadership at that point that determines how the fate of the country or how things will run. And that is absolutely unacceptable.